Welcome to the selected ones. When God swings his gavel, even quiet cries. Allow it to settle for a second. You see, in a society concerned with image, illusions, and well-designed public facades, one force never fails. Divine judgment. Not Carmelite or cosmic recommendations, but a higher reckoning that does not need your consent, permission, or contribution. It just comes. And when it occurs, it does not invalidate the diagnosis. Here's a fact that will give you goosebumps and maybe a nervous giggle. The human body is designed to physically simulate emotional guilt. According to studies, long-term remorse and lying may physically make a person ill, causing ulcers, sleeplessness, and even cardiac problems. Now image that on heavenly steroids. That was not an awful day. That is a sentence. This isn't about poetic justice, where your adversaries just trip over their own life. No, this is about how their symptoms mirror their sins so well. It's as if the world chose to print out a receipt, mark the costs in red, and staple it to their forehead. Pain fits like a suited suit, customized by the repercussions they believe they'd never have to face. The same goes for the selected ones. You don't need vengeance. Simply watch. Because when divine judgment arrives, it does not ask why. It just matches energy exactly, brutally, and without a cure. And, believe me, there is no Tylenol for a cosmic smack. Number 1. The wound will look like the weapon they used. The wound will look like the weapon they used. That is the type of justice that divine judgment provides. Not vague or abstract, but crafted with frightening precision. When someone intends to harm a chosen one, they often assume they are untouchable, shielded by power, charm, or pure manipulation. However, the risk of waging war on someone divinely protected is that the precise approach utilized in the assault becomes the pattern for their demise. If they utilized falsehoods to ruin your reputation, they will not go unnoticed. They'll be eaten by the same rumors they previously spread. If they try to isolate you, watch as their connections deteriorate one by one, until even their shadow loses faith in them. They will not suffer in unexpected ways. They will suffer in familiar ways, disturbingly similar to the games they played. That is heavenly symmetry. It is not always instantaneous. Sometimes they walk tall for a season, smiling, boasting, and living as if the world were their playground. But here's the issue with spiritual law. It does not hurry. It observes. It captures data. And when the time comes, the punishment will be a perfect match for the offense. People will not require an explanation. They will just nod because it makes logical, and it is the most painful aspect for them. The justice will not be a mystery. It will be so obviously fitting that they will be forced to confess it. Yes, I did it. Nobody will have to raise a finger. The weapon they previously carried with such pride will gradually turn in their hands. Not because someone exacted retribution, but because heavenly justice is poetic like that. It orchestrates disintegration. There is no irony about it. It is not symbolic. It's justice in high definition. They won't just lose. They'll lose in a manner that makes them think about what they did. There will be no solution for that kind of echo. It will ring daily till they learn or fall. Number 2. Judgment is not delayed. It's ripening. Judgment is not delayed. It's ripening. When someone damages you, particularly if you are one of the chosen, it is normal to want punishment to arrive quickly. Want to see something happen? Some indication that what they did would not go unpunished. However, divine judgment is not based on feeling or hurry. It moves on purpose. Sometimes that purpose manifests itself in the form of quiet. However, quiet does not indicate the lack of activity. This is the setup. What seems to be a delay is usually a strategic move. Just like fruit need time to mature before dropping, as does the aftermath from sin. Quick punishment may fulfill your emotions, but divine justice seeks something deeper. It seeks to uncover the real truth rather than just punishing surface-level conduct. So, although they seem to have gotten away with it, the repercussions are piling up. The longer it takes, the more accurate it gets, because divine judgment reveals rather than just strikes. It waits until their pride is at its pinnacle, and they've committed the crime so many times that they feel they're immune. That's when the fall strikes hardest, when they believe they've outwitted the system. That is not a delay. That is design, and it is brutally personal. This is not a one-size-fits-all vengeance. It's custom-built. Their demise will occur in the area in which they place the greatest confidence, whether it be their voice, influence, money, or relationships. It arrives when people least expect it. However, it makes the most sense. This kind of judgment does more than just punish. It educates not just them, but everyone who watches. It is not just for rectification. It's to clarify. So, when you believe nothing is going on, consider this. You're not awaiting judgment. You are watching the preparation. The autumn is approaching. It's simply making sure everything fits correctly. Because divine justice never fails. It just comes on time, fully stocked. Number 3. Karma does not knock. It duplicates. Karma does not knock. It replicates. When people conceive about karma or divine justice, they frequently envision a nebulous force that appears gradually, perhaps in a completely different manner than the initial crime. But that's not how it works. Not for the selected, and not for those who oppose them. The truth is crisper. What your adversaries send out into the world does not merely come back. It returns in a mirror image. And the scariest part? It doesn't seem random. It feels strangely familiar. It's as if life is replaying itself. But this time, they don't have control. The rumor they used to murder your characters now kills their own. The treachery they believed was cunning is turned on them by the individuals they trusted the most. The manipulation they employed to tug strings has trapped them in circumstances from which they cannot escape. It does not come back poetic. It comes back identical. And that's what makes it so cruel. There's no mystery about it. People surrounding them will notice and ask, wasn't that the same thing? What did they do to so and so? And that is the sting. They will be unable to separate themselves from the calamity since the pattern will point directly back at them. It's not vengeance, it's introspection. And divine justice ensures that the echoes are loud enough to rock the whole globe. This kind of response is never symbolic. This is not a warning. It is the final draft. By the time it arrives, it is too late to apologize. It's too late to transfer responsibility. It's too late to clean up the mess. They will experience the same suffering that they believe they were immune to. No one will have to explain it to them. They'll be aware that they're following their own script. What they wrote in your life with malice, they will now read aloud from theirs. Line by line. Karma does not arrive wearing a mask. It seems precisely like their transgression since divine justice does not need innovation to punish. It has just reached replay number 4. They'll bleed from the very sword they sharpened. They'll bleed from the very sword they sharpened. Hurting others and getting away with it gives you a strange sense of confidence, at least for a time. Your adversaries may believe that their words have the power to influence, manipulate, or master weaponry. They think they have found out how to influence results, manipulate others, and cut deep without repercussions. But what they don't understand is that the sword they're so proud of never leaves their hand, and it will ultimately turn against them. The instrument they use to cut through your peace, your identity, and your possibilities will betray them. Not because someone fights back, but because weapons fashioned in malice are cursed. They are never clean. They keep track of every individual they have injured, and the stain deepens with each hit. The weight eventually begins to cut inward. It doesn't matter how competent, respected, or untouchable they believe they have become. When it comes to justice, the universe doesn't care about your standing. The weapon does not recognize reputation. It acknowledges only purpose. And when the aim has always been to injure, the damage will eventually befall. What made them feel powerful in the past? Perhaps their charm, cleverness, and capacity to distort the truth will be the very things that shatter. The same mouth that lied will speak to the same network that they designed to control. People will close in the same way that they used to crush others, imploding. Not because someone conspired against them, but because they were carrying a loaded firearm backwards the whole time. Nobody is immune to the recoil of malice. You can't knife your way through life without slipping at some point. And when they do, the blade will move without hesitation. It does not matter who they are. It just follows the laws. They believe they were above. They use the same sharpness to demolish. Others will make their demise gradual, clear, and unmistakable. Number 5. Once you're selected, their battle becomes a trap of their own creation. When you are selected, their fight becomes a trap of their own design. There is something horribly ironic about attempting to harm someone who is divinely protected. Your foes believe they are launching a well-planned assault, but they are unaware that the combat they initiated is not a battle at all. It is bait. The divine does not need to raise a hand or strike back. It merely stands aside and allows them to confront the ghosts of their own pride, fear, and obsession. And the further they delve, the more entangled they get in a battle. Nobody else is even battling. They will concentrate over proving their point, exposing you, and breaking you down. During the procedure, they expose themselves. Their plots get more audacious, their ego becomes hungry, and their paranoia sharpens. And all the while, they are unaware that nothing is opposing them. There is no power impeding them, no heavenly hand attempting to stop them, since that is not how divine protection works. It permits. It gives them enough rope. It lets them make enough noise. It permits them to continue pushing until they reach their own breaking point. Because the true trap is their ego. It convinces them that they are winning, that they are intelligent enough to defy fate, clever enough to distort the reality loudly enough to drown out your favor. However, every step they take to damage you is another brick in their self-destructive path. And here's the twist. You don't have to clap back, defend yourself, or explain anything. The more quiet you are, the less troubled you will be. The more their acts demonstrate how out of control they are. That's when people take notice. That's when masks come off, since nothing shows a person's heart quicker than battling someone who isn't fighting back. They'll drive themselves to weariness, irritation, and final destruction, all while believing they have control. But in reality, they are not battling you. They're struggling with shadows. Shadows cast by their own ego, and they lose number 6. Divine judgment is not an illness, hence there is no treatment. It is an autopsy. Divine judgment is not an illness, hence there is no treatment. It is an autopsy. People frequently handle judgment as if it might be overturned, stopped, or softened with the correct apologies or public sorrow. But divine judgment does not function that way. It isn't a disease that requires treatment. This is the final report. It does not come to heal. It turns out that by the time it appears, the damage has already been done, not only to others, but also to the soul of the one who caused the injury. This is why there is no solution. A pattern cannot be fixed with an excuse. A lifetime of deceit cannot be undone with a single moment of insight. Divine judgment is not interested in superficial regret. It does not react to image control or emotional theater. It's an expose that cuts right through the performance and reveals the reality for everyone to see. It is post-mortem, not in the physical sense, but in moral and spiritual terms. Judgment comes when your adversaries have withered inside as a result of what they felt they were getting away with in terms of motivations, choices, and intents. All of it is dissected, not to give them a chance to clean up, but to reveal what was rotting all along. And here is when things turn harsh. They cannot walk away. There is no recovery arc. They are forced to confront the proof of who they really were when they believed no one saw them. And this is the most agonizing part. Everyone else can see it, too. Divine judgment does not occur softly. It turns on all of the lights and ensures that everyone can see what is on the table. It's not about punishing someone just for the purpose of it. It's about being clear. It's about the truth, having the last word. Because when someone acts as if they would never be held responsible, heavenly judgment does not whisper. It autopsies the lie they lived in and discloses the findings. Number 7. The unrepentant use exposure as their currency. The unrepentant use exposure as their currency. When someone goes through life causing damage without regret or second thought, they are accumulating moral and spiritual debt, and the reimbursement isn't in dollars. It comes with exposure. That becomes the price they pay for refusing to accept responsibility. Because, although repentance may have brought compassion, their refusal necessitates revelation. The unrepentant don't just make errors. They create patterns. They learn how to rationalize and conceal, how to manipulate the facts to maintain a clean appearance as their guilt rots underneath. But the cosmos does not keep silent indefinitely. Divine law does not forget. And when the tipping moment arrives, it does not just whisper their secrets. It transmits them. Their private faults became public spectacle, not from malice, but because they ignored every gentler caution. Here's the terrible reality. The longer they conceal it, the louder the exposure gets. There isn't just one secret being revealed. It is a chain reaction. Cover-ups, falsehoods, and manipulations. They all come apart at once, like a dam collapsing. And the deluge cannot be controlled. The echo makes things more worse. Once the truth is out, it continues circling. People speak. Stories spread. Every effort to move on is met with the sound of their own history hunting them down. That is the punishment for behaving as if consequences are optional. Your reputation becomes a cautionary story. This is not about a single terrible choice. It's about refusing to take ownership of it. An unwillingness to gaze into the mirror. And the consequence of that rejection is shame. Not because anybody intended to ruin them, but because exposure is all that remains when correction is disregarded. It's divine responsibility at its most raw. The unrepentant always believe they are secure behind their constructed image, but the truth does not need permission to emerge. It just waits until it can no longer be denied, and then it repays them in full. Number 8. Each sin is a seed. Some trees develop into nooses. Each sin is a seed. Some trees develop into nooses. People forget that deeds do not disappear just because no one saw them. What is done in secret does not vanish. It increases. Every lie, manipulation, and betrayal. They are more than simply moments. They are seeds that have been placed deep and will eventually take root. The dirt could be silent. The water can represent hubris. But make no mistake, what you sow will grow. Your adversaries may have believed they had buried their wrongdoings forever. However, buried items do not always perish. Sometimes they blossom into unexpected results. And the most unsettling part, the tree does not grow in a corner. It increases in public, gradually, steadily, and visibly. The things they accomplished in the dark stand tall enough for everyone to see. That is perfect timing. It doesn't just disclose. It magnifies. They believed they'd planted control. They believed they had planted advantage. But what they really sowed was their own demise. Sin does not remain seed-sized. It develops. It develops until it is so huge and evident that it demands a price. And the cost is not insignificant. It's tragic because, by the time the tree grows, it's no longer simply showing what they've done. It becomes the thing that keeps them in place. There is no way to get away from it or hide below it. The roots go too deep. And now for the reality that they never saw coming. The higher it rises, the steeper the fall. They didn't only experience plant failure. They planted their own publicity. They placed the item from which they would hang. Not physically, but in terms of reputation, credibility, and peace. It will mark the end of the tale they believed they controlled. That's the risk of believing you got away with it. Seeds do not make a sound as they enter the earth, but give it time. And what seemed to be innocuous becomes the stage for judgment. They will not tumble just because someone pushed them. They will fall because the tree they secretly cultivated has grown large enough to become their executioner. Number 9. You cannot pray away a debt that you have chosen not to pay. You cannot pray away a debt that you have chosen not to pay. There is a terrible fallacy that an apology can erase everything, that a few words or a frantic prayer can reverse the harm that someone intentionally inflicted. But heavenly justice is not based on feeling. It runs on the truth. It is not a vending machine where you may enter remorse and obtain pity. This is a balance sheet. And if someone continues to pile up misery, treachery, and dishonesty, the debt will be due with interest. This is where most folks do things wrong. They believe that showing contrition at the last minute will wipe out years of purposeful damage. However, apologies do not erase patterns. Saying sorry while continuing to engage in the same behaviors is like to putting a pail of water on a burning building and expecting the fire to thank you. Divine justice is unaffected by performance. It looks at consistency, not confession. Your adversaries may have deceived people. They may have shown repentance successfully enough to elicit pity or even praise. But heavenly justice sees things no one else does. The motivation behind the moment. It distinguishes between genuine guilt and phony guilt. When it's the latter, no prayer, fasting, or emotional appeal can halt what is already in motion. Because this is the truth. They made an investment in suffering. They sowed it, watered it, and watched it thrive. And now they will withdraw. Ruin. Not because God is harsh, but because divine rule is fair. You cannot injure people as if it were nothing. Expect the universe to treat you as if you were divine. That is not accountability. That is illusion. True kindness comes from change, not desperation. And when someone avoids the hard step of owning the harm and altering the habit, they lose the right to complain when judgment is rendered. They weren't merely careless towards others. They were irresponsible with themselves. You can't pray away something you haven't attempted to mend. Divine justice is unmoved by noise. It waits for change. And suppose change never arrived. Judgment will not falter. Number 10. The chosen are not untouchable. They are safeguarded for a purpose. The chosen are not untouchable. They are safeguarded for a purpose. People often look at persons who have divine favor and misinterpret their survival for arrogance or luck. But being selected does not imply being bulletproof. It is all about positioning. You were not saved since harm did not attempt to contact you. You survived because your perseverance served a purpose. You were intended to outlast it, not only for yourself, but so that what happened to you might be revealed and used as a heavenly example. This is what your adversaries never understood. They assumed they were just targeting a person. They had no idea they were testing a heavenly assignment. They believed that your resilience indicated you were easily manipulated or sluggish to respond. They misunderstood elegance with frailty. However, protection is not the same as apathy. It's a strategy. You were maintained whole not to illustrate your invincibility, but to give their acts context. An eyewitness. If you'd fallen, no lessons would have been learned. If you had shattered beyond repair, they would have gone away believing they had won. But you will survive, find serenity, and rise. These were not coincidences. They were evidence. These were heavenly receipts. Your presence became a mirror, proving that whatever weapon was created did not succeed. Not because it wasn't lethal, but because you were protected. And the covering was not there to spoil you. It was there to emphasize the reality that when someone attempts to bring down the chosen, they are not challenging the person. They are questioning the same order that put them there. That kind of defiance is usually met with repercussions. So, no, you are not invulnerable, but you are protected, not to soar above the turmoil, but to stand in it. So, when the dust settles and judgment is rendered, no one can doubt who was favored and why. You were never safeguarded just for your own comfort. You were safeguarded for clarity. As a result, their judgment may become the lesson they refuse to learn in any other manner. A number. God's judgment does not humiliate. It corrects by collapsing. God's judgment does not humiliate. It corrects by collapsing. When humans face divine judgment, it's tempting to believe it's all about revenge or spectacle. However, God is not interested in putting on a show for your enjoyment. The demise of your adversary is not for your amusement. It is for their awakening. Divine judgment is not petty. It's exact. It does not bring them down to ridicule them. It destroys their idea that they were untouchable. The above effect. It is irreversible. The fall is deliberate, not accidental. It takes away not just their authority, but also the falsehoods they use to legitimize their actions. The collapse is not only external, but also within. It drives people to confront the true version of themselves. They avoided manipulating the liar and betrayer. Judgment removes the mask, not to humiliate them in front of the world, but to show them who they have become. And it is not fast. Divine judgment allows the fall to unfold piece by piece. Reputation suffers, and relationships worsen. The things they relied on, status, power, and adulation, slipped straight through their fingers, not to destroy them beyond repair, but to shatter the idea that they were ever in charge to begin with. That is how God corrects, by eliminating all of the incorrect things people believed. He does not need to yell. He just allows the weight of their own decisions knock the barriers down. And, if they're willing, they can finally face the reality they've been avoiding for so long. Mercy enveloped in harshness. So, when they fall, do not expect disgrace. Look for revelations. Look for the moment when hubris meets reality, power meets its demise, and ego meets quiet. That is not cruelty. That is justice. It's not about seeing them pay. It's about them discovering who they really are and who they never were. Their collapse will be echoed in the same rooms where they attempted to silence you. Their fall will be echoed in the same rooms where they attempted to silence you. There's a hubris that comes with attempting to ruin someone softly. Your adversaries did not just oppose you. They cultivated an audience. They muttered in the corners. Crafted tales garnered support based on ego rather than facts. They wanted you little, unheard, and dismissed. And the worst part? Some individuals believed them. Someone clapped. Some nodded along without scrutinizing the script. But divine justice isn't only about results. It deals with surroundings, and the same locations in which they used to bury. Your voice will be the platform for their visibility. God does not bring them down in the dark. He brings the collapse into the spaces where they formerly felt most strong. Because rectification is not only about them. It's about explaining the truth to everyone who was duped by the deception. The same people who saw them triumph unjustly will now see their downfall. The same audience that they play for will now be held accountable. Their manufactured image will not just crack. It will break openly and irreversibly. And that is not petty. That is precise. Because what was done publicly has to be remedied openly. Divine correction does not believe in backstage remedies to frontstage breaches. When someone exploits the community to do damage, the community must face the consequences. That is not cruelty. It's about balance. It's not vengeance. It is reality. Finally getting up to pretension. And here's when it all becomes really brilliant. You'll be able to avoid speaking. You will not have to defend yourself, retaliate, or rehash the hurt. Your presence, still standing and unaffected, will tell everything as the fall reverberate. Your survivor will testify, and those who previously supported falsehoods will be forced to face the reality they disregarded. There is no privacy or divine correction, not when deceit was carried out in plain view. What they attempted to control will slip out of their grasp, and the stillness they sought to impose on you will be replaced by the sound of their own demise. Redemption cannot live with denial. Redemption cannot coexist with denial. Grace has its limitations, and that limit is the truth. People often discuss redemption as if it were automatic, as if you could achieve it just by feeling horrible or saying the appropriate words. But true redemption necessitates confrontation. It requires a person to look at the devastation they've created without flinching and without excuses. What about your enemies? They have perfected the art of denial. They lie to others. Even worse, they lie to themselves. And you can't recover from a hurt you won't recognize exists. Denial is more than just ignorance. It is a decision. They erected a barrier to protect their ego, allowing the individuals they injured to bleed out. They believe that if they don't name it, it doesn't count. If they change the tale, they can avoid the repercussions. But heavenly judgment does not apply to their account of events. It waits for exposure rather than confession or remorse. Because sometimes the only way to redemption is via a collapse that removes their ability to deceive. That is the peril of denial. It delays compassion. It delays healing. It exacerbates the decline since they had several opportunities to correct the situation but passed them up. And when divine judgment comes, it is not willing to bargain. It's not attempting to strike a deal. It is showing up to collect the debt with facts rather than sentiments. Redemption might have been theirs, but they sought it without responsibility. They wanted to be forgiven without recognizing their fault. And it is not redemption. That is manipulation. And heaven does not allow that. Instead, exposure strikes like a storm. It clears the mask. It cancels the performance. It brings the truth out into the open, where everyone can see. Not to humiliate, but to finally stop the denial. They refuse to put down on their own. Only when there is nothing left to hide behind can redemption begin, whether they still want it. A number. When you are selected, your silence does not confer authority. When you are selected, it is like looking in a mirror. Your quiet does not equate to power. It is a mirror. Many people assume that keeping silent in the face of an assault demonstrates weakness or defeat. However, the selected believe that quiet is much more deadly to their foes than any outpouring. It does not yell or rave. It mirrors your peaceful presence into a relentless mirror that reveals precisely who they are and what they've done without you having to raise a finger. That stillness brings their own darkness into the light, exposing the fissures in their well-constructed facade. You do not need vengeance, since your mere presence reveals the truth. While others hurry to make noise and diversions, your quiet is a stark contrast that reveals the turmoil under the surface. You do not need to prove yourself or justify your stance. Your steadfast presence does it for you softly, but undeniably. It disturbs them since it is not a response they can control or influence. Judgment in this context is not about show or drama. It's surgical, precise, and final. It cuts right to the heart of their falsehoods and ego, without spending breath on theatrics. The quiet does not shout, but rather dissects, leaving no opportunity for escape or denial. The silent storm causes their house of cards to crumble from within. Your quiet is not an absence. It's a force, a mirror that reflects back their genuine selves, compelling others to see what they've worked so hard to conceal. It does not have to be loud since it is inescapable. Judgment is not a performance. It is the unshakable truth, standing firm among the chaos. And that truth has the greatest power. Quiet, unrelenting, and entirely final. In the end, divine judgment is not a passing storm, but an unavoidable reckoning. A tenacious power that cannot be bargained with, subdued, or outmaneuvered. It goes beyond human pleas and superficial apologies, probing deep into the heart of every choice, every hidden motive, and every shadow cast by the unrepentant. The chosen are not immune to challenge or attack, but they are protected by purpose, a purpose that ensures their survival so that truth can eventually emerge. Unmasked and unmistakable, your adversaries may feel they have such strength that their plots and hatred will crush you under the weight of their falsehood. But they fail to see that their own misdeeds would be the cause of their downfall. The blades they sharpen to injure you will be used to cut them down. The fights they fight will lead them into a trap of their own design. Divine judgment is not loud nor furious. It's surgical, silent, and final. It discloses without the necessity for your protection. It reveals without your assistance. And it corrects without the brutality of disgrace. This is why there is no cure for divine judgment. It is not an illness to be treated, but rather an autopsy to be conducted. It reveals the deterioration under the surface, subjecting the unrepentant to the harsh light of truth and consequences. Those who refuse to accept responsibility just increase their guilt, turning their secrets into echoes that haunt every place where they previously took safety. And that exposure reveals their disintegration, which is being played out openly in the exact places where they were formerly silent. Your quiet, however, is not weakness. It is the most potent mirror, revealing their inner character with stark clarity. You do not need to fight back, since your very existence exposes their falsehoods and indicates the futility of their attempts. Their fall is not to fulfill your wrath, but to confront them with the fact that they attempted to avoid. No one is beyond divine law. So stay steady, knowing that your survival is not an accident, but a divine arrangement. Your perseverance serves as a testament. That judgment is not intended to punish arbitrarily, but to correct, expose, and finally instruct. When the dust settles, the lesson will be clear. Genuine power rests not in revenge, but in quiet, surgical, and completely final injustice. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to subscribe and join our community by liking this video and sharing it with people who need to hear this uncompromising truth. Share your opinions in the comments. Your voice is important, and each tale adds strength to the discourse. Together, we unveil the hidden and remain unshaken in the face of criticism. Stay tuned, stay strong, and let us keep the truth alive. God bless you.